Stop overthinking. Clear your mind. Just live in the present. If you spend a lot of time trapped in your own head, you have probably heard this advice 1,000 times. But it avoids the central problem. It tells you what to do, but it never explains why the brain compulsively generates this endless stream of chatter in the first place. Treating an overactive mind as a simple habit we can just suppress means we miss out on understanding what the brain is actually trying to accomplish. Philosopher Nishida Kitarō proposed that overthinking serves a specific purpose. It is an active, ongoing construction project for the ego. Every time you ask, "What if they don't like me?" or "What's going to happen tomorrow?" you reinforce the belief that there is a central me sitting inside your head, attempting to control reality. These daily thoughts act like bricks. Your brain uses them to manufacture a rigid identity, layer by layer, out of sheer interpretation. To escape the exhaustion of overthinking, you have to recognize what this diagram illustrates. It is the exact engine your brain uses to draw the boundaries of a rigid sense of self. Nishida built this idea around a concept he called pure experience. This is the exact fraction of a second where reality happens, right before your mind arrives to label it. Imagine you are watching the rain. For a brief millisecond, there is nothing but the raw sound of water hitting the pavement. Then, a fraction of a second later, the internal narrator steps in to complain about how the weather ruined your afternoon plans. The same thing happens when you drink a cup of coffee. First, there is the raw physical sensation of bitterness on your tongue. Almost immediately, that sensation triggers a cascade of opinions about how it needs more sugar, or a memory about drinking coffee at work. Notice the rule operating in these micro-moments. The physical rain and the actual coffee never changed. Only your internal story about them did. Because we spend almost all of our waking hours living inside that secondary story instead of the raw experience, the narrative eventually convinces us that it is the foundation of who we are. Modern neuroscience supports Nishida's philosophy. We now know the brain is essentially a prediction engine, scanning for information gaps and rushing to fill them to maintain a feeling of continuity. The brain seeks stability. To get it, it constantly generates unverified explanations for everyday, ambiguous events. Look at this flowchart. A silent phone means you are ignored. A vague message means you're fired. Vacation photos prove you're falling behind. In these scenarios, the brain answers, "What does this mean?" But it replaces reality with a manufactured identity. Having a thought is harmless. The danger arises when you passively observe that thought and unconsciously fuse your entire identity with it. There is a massive psychological difference between noticing "I had an anxious thought" and accepting the absolute belief that "I am an anxious person." An overactive mind is like sitting next to someone in a movie theater who refuses to stop loudly narrating every single scene on the screen. When that unconscious commentary goes unchecked, it eventually becomes louder and feels more real than the actual life you are living. Nishida was not anti-thinking. Thought solves complex problems, builds civilizations, and is essential for human survival. We are not trying to eradicate it. The issue is timing. Intentional, directed thinking is a useful tool. Automatic, compulsory overthinking is an exhausting parasite that consumes your energy. The crucial step here is realizing that you cannot declare a war on your own thoughts and win. Instead, you have to train the brain's capacity for awareness. As the visual suggests, developing mental discipline involves relocating thought from an automatic cycle into a deliberate tool, changing your relationship with ideas. This brings us to Nishida's deepest concept, which he called Basho. Basho is the fundamental space or the place where all of your experiences, thoughts, and emotions appear. You can think of Basho like the sky. The sky effortlessly holds dark, violent storm clouds, but no matter how intense the weather gets, the sky itself is never damaged by the storm. Imagine you are about to give a public presentation, and your brain is flooded with catastrophic thoughts about forgetting your words or embarrassing yourself. Instead of panicking and demanding those thoughts stop, you can run a simple cognitive exercise. You just pause and ask yourself, who exactly is noticing this thought? By recognizing awareness as a space larger than any single thought, the rigid identity built by overthinking begins to soften. The storytelling mind continues to narrate, but the self is no longer defined by the words it chooses.